Baseball isn't just numbers, numbers, numbers.
This game is not being played on computers.
You don't do that with a bunch of statistical gimmicks.
You don't put a team together with a computer.
We're talking weighted runs created plus,
expected WOBA,
his sweet spot rate,
defensive runs above average,
average exit velocity,
barrel rate,
xFIP,
BABIP,
SIERA.
We are above replacement radio. And welcome to Above Replacement Radio, where we're talking baseball kind of whenever. I'm your host, Chris Gianta. Over there on the other side of the screen is Daniel Curran. How you doing, Daniel?
Chris, I'm doing very well today. Today is the start of our off-season traditions, so to speak. We have positional rankings starting on this show. Very fittingly, there's been a lot of action over at the first base side of the field. In terms of off-field stuff this week, we have a lot of different trades. We have some signings. We have a lot of moving parts in the first base market across Major League Baseball. And fittingly, that is where we are today. Later in the show, we're going to have Chris and I giving you our top 10 first basemen going into 2025. And we're very excited to talk about all of the happenings in Major League Baseball.
Once again, it is... Yeah, it's good to it's good to start off the rankings. And yeah, honestly, like there's a few things that I particularly enjoy preparing for when it comes to this show, and positional rankings has become one of those things where I really, really look forward to it. Because and also, like, we do our top 50s, and those are all like, the best players in the league. Sometimes just 10 through 6 in a positional rank is like, oh yeah, let's, it's fun to like talk about these guys because, maybe they're not going to be known as the best players in the league, but they really help out their team and should be kind of recognized. So it's going to be fun. Start off with first base, which is kind of, it's a good way to ease into things because it's not like it's not going to be like, not a lot of the players on that top 50 are going to be, or not a lot of the players in that top 10 are going to be in the top 50. And
I'm thinking 4, maybe 5.
4, like, 5 tops
at first glance. Yeah.
And I doubt anyone's making like the top. I don't think anyone's making the top 5, never mind the top 10. But first we will get into the news of someone who used to play a little bit more first base. Cody Bellinger has been traded from the Chicago Cubs to the New York Yankees. The Yankees sent over Cody Poteet along with, I believe, $5 million in cash. I forget if that was $5 million annually or $5 million in total, but nonetheless, Cody Bellinger is a Yankee. What did you think about this news?
I think it made sense. I think this was kind of something that we all saw coming. I mean, we on this show, we've been talking about Cody Bellinger going to the Yankees for 2 off seasons now. I mean, it was, predicted last year by you, I believe, specifically. And this is kind of how he found his way to the Bronx. I think there are one of 2 ways to look at this signing and what it means for the Yankees. You could look at it as this is the replacement for Juan Soto, or you could look at it as this is the replacement for Alex Verdugo, because the Yankees are losing 2 different outfielders this offseason. There's really no replacing Juan Soto. Like, I know that you can, people make the Moneyball jokes about recreating him in the aggregate. You can't do that. You really just cannot do that. But you know what? I mean, if you're going to look at Cody Bellinger in comparison to what he brought to the team with Alex Verdugo last year, I think this is certainly an upgrade for the Yankees by pretty much most metrics, right? I mean, they have very similar skill sets. They're guys that don't strike out a lot. Maybe they leave a little bit more to be desired on the power side of things. But Bellinger also plays, good defense. He has good base running skills. He is obviously under more of a bit of a contract, right? It's 2 years and $20 million per year, or 1 year and then a player option, right?
Yeah, I think so. I think
it is.
I forget if he had
$27 million this year and then a $25 million player option next year.
Right.
So honestly, like, the Yankees' goal for him should be he opts out, or at least he has a season worthy of opting out. Maybe they restructure that at some point if it's going well enough. Like
that could be an interesting thing. And the reason why he had that brief of a contract in the first place was because I don't think the free agent market really trusted him heading into this last offseason because normally when a player hits the open market in their late 20s after hitting over 300, putting up an 881 OPS and having a 2020 season, they're going to garner a lot of attention. But there was some underlying stuff with his contact, average exit velocity and just general batted ball distribution rates that just didn't seem to line up completely with the results that he was getting. So I think the free agent market was kind of waiting it out, waiting for him um, to perform better. And I think, the plan for Bellinger, the ideal scenario for Bellinger was he was going to have another great season this past year and then hit the free agent market again. Unfortunately for him, that didn't happen. He was a little bit injured, but also just, had downgrades in performance. I think both offensively and defensively. His OPS plus was only 111 this past year. So yeah, like him hitting the open market would not make sense considering the fact that I think he's due to make $27.5 million this year. And the Yankees are going to be eating 5 million of that. So Cubs get 22.5 million off the table. But yeah, so yeah, and back to your point about replacing Alex Verdugo, I think that's a very accurate assessment of the situation. Because yeah, as you mentioned, Alex Verdugo's hitting the open market, and the Cody Bellinger they're getting right now is somewhat similar to the Alex Verdugo they were getting last year. Obviously, Verdugo had his own detractions in performance this past year. But yeah, heading into last year, he was a flat 100 OPS plus guy in that 2023 season with like fairly neutral defense. Whereas Cody Bellinger has a 111 OPS plus this year, and I think fairly neutral defense as well, if I'm correct there. Yeah, 0 outs above average and plus one arm value, so fairly neutral defense. But yeah, like I think it's a very accurate assessment to say, now that Verdugo's going to be not on the team, Bellinger is going to sort of take that place for him.
There are actually some underlying numbers that did look a little bit better for him. His barrel rate, whether it be per plate appearance or per plate or per batted ball, were pretty much identical from last year. Um, his hard hit rate went up slightly, but his hard hit rate was also quite bad last year. His strikeout to walk numbers stayed roughly the same, and obviously, but the results, of course, were very different, and that's more of an indictment on 2023 than it was on 2024, right? I mean, if you showed someone all of the underlying metrics between 2023 and 2024, you wouldn't expect a 130 point decrease in OPS between the two seasons. But that's, of course, what you saw with Cody Bellinger. Chris, I know you dove pretty deeply into his stats last year and why we saw the perceived strong season that we did from him in 2023 that led to the caution on his free agency case last year. And a lot of those numbers just kind of went back to more or less normal this past year. I think pretty comfortably 2024 is a more accurate representation of Cody Bellinger. There's probably some sort of optimism that he can maybe do better playing in Yankee Stadium, right? It's obviously two very different left or right fields for a left-handed hitter that has power. And I think the Yankees are probably hoping to get somewhere around the 800s in OPS with him with solid defense and base running.
Yeah, indeed. And yeah, like even if he's the Cody Bellinger of if he stays at this level, he's going to be better than what Alex Verdugo was this past year. But yeah, I did talk about why teams might be hesitant on Cody Bellinger. It was actually one of our last YouTube shorts. But I can't take a full victory lap because he hit 362 on ground balls last year. For whatever reason, even with like so that's almost more of an indictment on Cody Bellinger and why his performance can't stay the same. Because even when he is, getting pretty lucky on ground balls, he's not performing that well, at least as of now. So yeah, he hit better on ground balls than he did in 2023. And I'm trying to, or yeah, what was the I mean, he hit them a little bit harder. He hit ground balls zero point 0.7 miles per hour harder on average, but still, I don't think that's enough of a difference to make you really good at getting hits on ground balls. But I don't know. Maybe he's just very good at placing them. I know there are players in the league who do that, like Xander Bogaerts and Jose Altuve, and other maybe faster players. But yeah, with Cody Bellinger, yeah, I think I would agree on the front that his 2024 is a little bit more representative of what he did in 2023. So yeah, if I'm a Yankees fan, I'm not looking for 2019 Bellinger. I'm not looking for 2023 Bellinger. You hope that he can just be an above average player. And that's really all you can ask for him right now. And if he does better than that, then great. But his expectations should just be, 2 to 3 wins above replacement at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit rough to be paying, that kind of money for that kind of production, but I mean, you're still the New York Yankees. It shouldn't matter uh, what the payroll is. And like I said, you're trying to get more production out of him than say an Alex Verdugo from last year. And like I said, maybe there's optimism he can perform better in Yankee Stadium. If he had played all of his games there last year, he would have hit 24 home runs, which is much better than the 18 that he actually hits, and is especially better than the 15 he would have hit if he played every game at Wrigley Field. So yeah, the stadium is more catered to his needs. I think there's certainly I mean, if we want to talk about Cody Bellinger being a luck merchant, right? If that's what he was in 2023, maybe Yankee Stadium is the perfect place for him.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Especially for a guy who seems to have sacrificed power for contact. While his strikeout rates have dramatically gone down and been around that level for 2 years now, his average exit velocity and barrel rate have also gone down.
I mean,
So
he had like his strikeout rate is basically where it was from like 2019 and 20, where he also, well, he wasn't very good in 2020, but he also had that power in 2019. And I get that he's not 23 anymore, but still, he's going into age 29. It's not like things should be just gone by now. I don't
yeah,
know.
no,
I don't know. Can you imagine if the Yankees can get him back up to like around 90 miles per hour on average exit velocity?
right, right,
Like
yeah.
he's an easy 30 to 35 home run hitter.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And yeah, like I think it's a debate to see, where is that balance point for him? Because we all know, um, you know, bigger swings for the most part usually result in, higher exit velocity, but also more risk of swinging and missing. We see that with guys like, Aaron Judge, Ellie De La Cruz, big swingers, aggressive in the box, high bat speed. But when they hit it, it is, it's a big deal. With Cody Bellinger, I think, he found that, he was striking out quite a bit in 2021 and yeah, 2021 and 2022. So I think
Mm-hmm.
we don't have bat speed data from before this past year, but it seems like he's slowed down his swing because you see his average exit velocity go down, you see his barrel rate go down, but you see his strikeout rate go down as well. And yeah, it garnered better results than the previous 2 years, in 2023. But yeah, we'll see if he can at some point find that balance where he can have this high of a contact rate while also hitting the ball really, really hard. But it just hasn't seemed to happen since 2020.
Yeah, I mean, I think from the Cubs' perspective, I think a lot of people are naturally going to look at this and be like, "Wait, you traded Bellinger for Cody Poteet? What do you mean?" And I think most of this deal for the Cubs is to A, free up some positional spots, but more importantly, B, to offset payroll. Obviously, you're losing 20, you're getting 22 million off the books for next year, and then if he takes the player option, I think 19 million off the books for next year. So, like the Cubs were, this report just came out this past week, but the Cubs were one of 9 teams that were over the luxury tax threshold in the 2024 season. In their case, in particular, they were $2 million over, which is kind of not really where you want to be. I think if you're going to go over, then go over. Really go for it. The Cubs didn't do that. They missed the playoffs, and it was all kind of for nothing that they were that much over the luxury tax. So, getting that payroll off of their system obviously helps to get them under the luxury tax and get them to a point where maybe if they want to go spend big at the trade deadline next year, they have the cap to do that while still staying under. Obviously, maybe it frees up space for a potential Kyle Tucker extension if that's something that they want to do. Um, So there's, I initially I saw this and thought, okay, how do the Cubs react to this? Do they spend on another big player? Do they maybe get, say, an Alonso, maybe someone else, a free agent that's out there, a Teoscar Hernandez? Uh, but I think they're probably, or maybe even a pitcher. I don't think that that's what they're going to do. I think they're just going to kind of keep the payroll as is, maybe get another pitcher, if that. But I mean, this is, they still have three outfielders and a DH, in line that are all major league players without Bellinger. So I don't know. I do think that this made sense for them as well.
Yeah, no, I totally agree because yeah, when we were talking about the Kyle Tucker trade last week, it just we barely even mentioned Bellinger because he did not really seem like a piece of this. So it really just seemed like a natural pin to fall with the Cubs. And yeah, it frees up $22.5 million for them. That probably wasn't going to turn out. They weren't going to get a good return on investment if they were going to keep Bellinger on the roster. Unless I don't know, unless they put him back at first base. But even then, like you
You
want to,
have Michael Bush.
yeah, you
You
have
don't
Michael
need
Bush,
to.
so
Yeah.
you don't need to do that. So yeah, it made a lot of sense. And yeah, for anyone complaining about the return, I kind of get it, but it's really just like the Yankees purchased a contract pretty much. Like they got a free agent and gave one person
Yeah.
for the rights for him. Like remember like let's look back 7 years ago when Carlos Stanton got traded. The Yankees gave up Starlin Castro and two pretty unknown prospects. It was just because Stanton was going to be paid $30 million a year for the next decade. Um, so yeah, that's what the Yankees were giving up, was that money, not necessarily prospect capital. So yeah, when that there's a reason why the Giancarlo Stanton deal is like that, and the Garrett Crochet deal, requires tons of high level talent to do that because Garrett Crochet, in terms of money, costs nothing compared to Giancarlo Stanton and Cody Bellinger. So yeah, that's the reason why the Cubs didn't really get much of a return. It's just because the return was taking money off their hands. So yeah, I think yeah. Anything more on the Cody Bellinger trade?
Yeah. I mean, I think that kind of does it for both sides. I'm very excited to see the Cubs are a team that I'm very excited to see next year. I like their lineup. I think everything makes more sense than say, Isak Paredes and Cody Bellinger on the Cubs. For example, I'm excited to see maybe what steps the farm system takes. Obviously, Matt Shaw is probably the biggest guy to keep an eye on. Does he break camp? Is he the everyday third baseman at some point this season? Like, there's a lot of exciting questions to be answered with the Cubs, and with the Yankees. I mean, this it makes sense. You're trying to add more. Not only are you trying to replace X, Y, and Z, like you're trying to put more established bats in this lineup because the narrative all of last year was, oh, all you have is Soto and Judge, and you need more than just those two established bats throughout the season, guys that people might fear to some degree. And I don't know if people feel that way about Bellinger, but he could certainly become that guy.
Yeah, yeah. There's always that hope, and especially he's only heading into his age 29 season.
Mm-hmm.
It's easy to forget that because of how early his success was. Um, So yeah, it'll be interesting. Yeah, Cubs will definitely be interesting. I think a fun, like a literal fun team to watch, considering like just they're defensively, they're just all over the field. Like think about just the middle of that infield, or the middle of that defense with Dansby Swanson and Nico Horner, and then you have Pete Armstrong in center field. Like that's just,
That's another thing. So excited for that
yeah, just like it's
because I
just
mean
hitting it
he
in
was kind
that
of showing it
general.
last. He was kind of showing us what he's capable of towards the end of the last season there, and it was awesome.
Yeah, like just hitting it to that general area is gonna be a tough situation for opponents.
Yeah,
But yeah, and then you have finally a very established bat in Kyle Tucker, and there's some good arms in there as well. I
a
think
true middle of the order bat. Yeah,
yeah, and then yeah, Justin Steele I think is a certified number one in that rotation. So that's also another guy to look for. All right, so yeah, want to move on to the first base
yeah.
market?
I mean, where do we even want to start here? There's so much that's happened at first.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I guess chronologically, the first thing that happened this past week was
Yep.
Christian Walker signing a 3-year, $60 million deal with the Houston Astros. What did you think about this signing?
I'm kind of shocked that a team didn't top 3 years and 60 million for him.
Yeah, right, right.
I thought, I mean, I don't know, 370 I think could have gotten it done for someone.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, thinking about some of the deals that have been handed out this offseason, especially to pitchers, like, Nathan Eovaldi is making 3 years and 75, or he's making $25 million a year over 3 years, and he's older than Christian Walker, and
Yeah.
it's hard to say that Eovaldi is
And Christian
significantly.
Walker is so much more sturdy and dependable than
Yeah,
pretty much any pitcher. Like he's been kind of the same guy for the last 3 years now,
yeah, exactly, exactly.
right? Like best defensive first baseman in baseball. The base running took a bit of a hit last year, but that can kind of go up and down. Like that can be somewhat random for a lot of players.
Yeah,
He is going into age 34, so this contract takes him to age 36. And yeah, I don't
right.
know. I like this. It's easy to say like, oh, this guy, this right-handed hitter with some pop just went to Houston. He's great for there, just kind of automatically without looking things over. But that actually does really apply for Christian Walker. He is a guy that does pull the ball a decent amount. Not only for homers, but I mean, I could see him hitting a lot of doubles off of that weird left field wall out there. Just to the right of the Crawford boxes. If you're looking from home plate at least. Just going into the StatCast stuff again, he would have hit 28 home runs in Houston last year compared to 26 that he actually hit. So it is a bit of a marginal increase, sure, but I mean this is such a position of need for the Astros, and this is honestly maybe the best guy they could have gotten for what they wanted. Like they weren't going to spend the big money on someone like Alonso. They didn't really have the trade capital for someone that we'll maybe talk about later in the show, whether that be a Naylor or a Lowe. Christian Walker made the most sense for this team at first base.
Right, right. Yeah, it's certainly a good fit. Looking at some statistics, or wait, I don't think he reached the 400 batted ball threshold. My mistake. Hold, please hold, audience.
He hit 354.
He had 354 batted balls, so he was 35th, had the 35th highest rate of batted balls be pulled fly balls out of 170. So, that's top, definitely top 20% of players in terms of hitting hitting pulled fly balls. So yeah, I mean that's certainly a good thing, and as you mentioned, fills a position of need. Pretty much ever since uh, after Yuli Gurriel's batting title
Yeah,
year, there's been a bit of a hole at
his
that position for
his
Houston.
batting his batting title year where they had him hitting like eighth in the playoffs,
Yes, exactly.
even during the NL when they had to have a pitcher hit.
Right, right. But yeah, ever since then, I think Yuli Gurriel had a couple down years in a row. They got Jose Abreu. Obviously, that was a bit of a disaster. Um, and then yeah, and they had, John Singleton there this past year. There's,
I always
it's
say
been
this. Imagine telling someone in the year 2014 that 10 years from now, John Singleton will win a positional battle over Jose Abreu.
yeah, it's pretty crazy. But he did do that. However, yeah, I guess the Astros are moving on from John Singleton for the current moment. Um,
Crazy.
crazy to think about.
Who could have ever seen that?
Yeah, I guess to go with your point on the 20 million per year, only getting 3 years and $60 million, I do wonder if there's a real stigma in the world of baseball post Pujols fielder Chris Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Mm-hmm.
like there's really not much incentive in investing in a first baseman into their 30s. And I think we saw that with guys like
I was to say, what
Freddie,
precedent is there
like yeah, like
for in advocacy for it?
yeah, like
There's probably some out there.
in terms of
Maybe like Paul Goldschmidt's extension with the Cardinals.
Oh, certainly. Well, what I'm saying is, I think there's a stigma with that.
Yeah,
And Freddie Freeman and Paul Goldschmidt paid the price for it.
Freddie Freeman, duh. Yeah,
Yeah, Freddie Freeman only got 6 years, 162, despite a very good career heading into that contract. I think Goldschmidt was 5 and 130 or something like that. I think that turned out very successfully for the Cardinals.
yeah.
But yeah, you don't see any first baseman, hitting near $300 million. I don't think, if I'm not mistaken. Bryce
No.
Harper was an outfielder when he signed with the Phillies, so that doesn't count, obviously. So yeah, like I think there is a bit of a stigma with that. Um, and maybe, with Christian Walker, who's heading into his age, what is it, 33 or 34 season?
34.
Yeah, a guy heading into his age 34 season. Um, Maybe I think there's just less incentive to invest there, or perceived incentive to invest. So maybe that's the case, but all in all, this was, this it's a better option than Pete Alonso. It's a better option than some of the trade targets out there. In terms of the available first baseman, I think he was the best one. So Astros definitely did a good move there, and yeah, like they just keep doing it. The machine keeps rolling on.
Yeah, and I mean not only that, but best defensive first baseman in baseball for each of the last 3+ years.
Yeah,
Like
yeah, and
really, really the only like one of like two people that you can really strongly say like plays the first base position very well.
yeah, that's certainly why. Um, that's certainly why I would say that he is the best option out there. I don't think he's a better bat than Pete Alonso necessarily, but his defense makes up for that. I think they're pretty even bats, fairly. But Walker's defense is leaps and bounds ahead of Pete Alonso's. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I think how we can kind of do this is the Diamondbacks are losing Christian Walker. Let's talk about the first baseman they got.
Yeah, well, when did this happen? The
Last
Diamondbacks got
night, I believe.
Okay,
Saturday night.
yeah, I was probably like in Delaware or something like that.
You were in Delaware this week.
Well, I was driving from Virginia to Connecticut.
Yeah,
It was
yeah, yeah.
probably
Okay, that's
somewhere on the road somewhere.
fair. Yep. Yeah,
What
Josh Naylor got traded from the Cleveland Guardians
This is news
to
to me.
wait,
I
what?
did, I did not know this.
You're just now finding out.
Yes,
You're
yes,
literally just now finding out about the Josh Naylor trade.
yep.
Josh Naylor got traded to the Arizona Diamondbacks for Slade Cecconi, who is a right-handed pitcher, and a round B compensation draft pick.
All right, that's
Naylor is a
good to
free
know.
agent at the end of the year. Cecconi has some interesting stuff. Obviously, if you were to just look at the Savant sliders, which I don't always believe is just on its face the best analysis, you might see, oh, he wasn't very good. Why did they do this? First of all, Cleveland pitching lab. Second of all, uh, Naylor is a free agent at the end of the year, and the Guardians signed a first baseman like minutes after this deal was announced.
Right, right.
You know about that one, right?
Well, now I'm looking at. Well, I didn't know about that, and I just looked at the Fangraphs roster resource, and I was like, oh, they got an old friend back.
Yeah, and for the third time. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean the Josh Naylor trade, I really like it. I think he's going to fit nicely in Arizona. Kind of just like he did in Cleveland. Arizona, there was something going on with that offense last year. They led the league in weighted runs created plus. I talked at length last year about Eugenio Suarez and his pulled fly balls in the second half. Josh Naylor had some of the best pulled fly balls of any first baseman last year. I believe he was. I put down just to give you an idea. I put 14 first basemen down for my top 10 list. Josh Naylor was fourth among them in pulled fly balls last year, or percent of fly balls pulled rather, like 31% or whatever. So
Hmm.
that's something that I think will play very nicely in Arizona. Not necessarily too different than the way it did in Cleveland, but it's a good replacement for Walker, who the Diamondbacks probably knew they weren't going to get back. He might be a cheaper option when he hits free agency next year, but he's uh, going into his age 28 season, so he's much younger. And I think there is maybe more upside uh, with him than there is with Walker.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's Josh Naylor, I think he went through just a change in approach a little bit this past
Hmm.
year. He seemed to just even like looking at percentage numbers, 2023 he hit 308, slugged 489. 2024 his average went way down to 243, but his slugging was did not have as much of a drop. It was at 456. So although his OPS and although his slugging went down, his ISO actually went up, which is
Mm.
very, very rare. So yeah, it turned out to be more home runs and less singles for him. Like I don't know if I think his offense production in general stayed roughly the same about, but he did have some a
Well,
different approach.
he hit 30 home runs compared to 17, 31 home runs compared to 17 last year.
Yeah, yeah, he definitely hit more home runs. I think, his OPS definitely went down. I think his OPS plus went down as well. Yeah, OPS plus went down 12 points. So, but yeah, I mean, maybe in the long run, it's just something more that you can rely upon. So we'll definitely see that play out. And yeah, only heading into his age 28 season as well. I think it's just a classic Guardians move to just try and get the most out of your own talent within your organization. That's why they felt like they had to do it and sign Carlos Santana to a, probably I would imagine it was a cheap deal. Like 1 year?
Yeah, it was 1 year, 12
Yeah.
million. Just to give you some more on Josh Naylor, you might be wondering how exactly, well, he hit 31 home runs this year compared to 17 last year. First of all, he had 140 more plate appearances. That'll obviously do it.
Mhm.
That's the main reason he was just simply more available. He actually had less hits, like you mentioned. Yeah, like the batting average went way down, but the OPS didn't go down by nearly as much. Um, but he in 2023, his fly balls had a 91.3 mile per hour average exit velocity. In 2024, that was up to 93.8 miles per hour. So that went up by 2.5%. In 2023, 28% of his fly balls were pulled. In 2024, that was 31.9%. So over 4% more fly balls were pulled. And the fly ball rate as a whole actually stayed roughly the same. So he got more out of his fly balls, and obviously was more available. That led to that sort of increase in power. You mentioned the increase in ISO. Uh, so yeah, I mean, I think there's some really interesting potential that could be unlocked in Arizona here.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. He's definitely like, and if anything, the ability, he's hit 300 in a year, in pretty much a full year, and he's hit uh over 30 home runs in a full year. It was in different years, but the potential to do both is in there. So yeah, I mean,
Which
if
would be
he,
crazy. Yeah,
yeah,
330 home runs. That's like actually an elite hitter.
yeah, that would be, unless you have like, five doubles and two walks
Well,
throughout the
sure,
year.
yeah.
But for the most part, that usually
But
turns into a
thankfully,
pretty elite
Josh
stat.
Naylor did have a 9.2% walk rate last year, which was his career highest.
Yeah, right, right, right. So yeah, you know, he's shown the ability to do both. If he can put it together in one season, that would be pretty incredible. Not saying that there's a high chance that he's going to do that, but it's those aspects of his hitting are in there.
Hmm.
So it's certainly interesting. And yeah, Carlos Santana goes to the Guardians. Obviously it's not a long-term commitment, but they got one of the best defensive first basemen in baseball. Isn't that
Yes, they
crazy?
did.
Yeah. Um,
Yeah, and also, hey, they got an old friend back. This is his third tenure in the Cleveland organization, which is pretty cool. He's going into his age 39 season, uh, but can still bring it. I mean, still absolutely adds value to a team.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's good for them to not have a long-term commitment to first base because potentially the actual long-term commitment will be to Kyle Manzardo,
Yeah,
Monzardo. Um, he's heading into his age 24 season. He barely cracked the rookie qualifications this past year, had a little over 150 plate appearances. Um, but yeah, I'm sure, like, I don't take it as the alarm bells aren't going off for how I think the Guardians feel about Kyle Manzardo. I think they're just being a little bit more patient with him, waiting for him to, waiting for his wings to come out so they can, let him fly and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, he only had 156 plate appearances in the regular season last year. There's no need to really rush whatever you think you need out of him.
Yeah, and it's cool that they,
Give him some veteran presence to learn from.
yeah, it's cool they still went on the free agent market. It's not like they, got rid of a player and just let that position, you know,
Yeah,
have that position just go into whoever was left in the organization.
go to the void.
They actually felt they made a win now move, which is pretty cool.
Hmm. I mentioned pulled fly balls earlier with Josh Naylor. 41% of Carlos Santana's fly balls last year were pulled,
41%.
which is pretty sick. Yeah,
That's very big for those
that's huge.
unaware.
And not only yeah, and I mean as a switch hitter too, like that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I mean, that works for Jose Ramirez. We know that.
Hmm.
But yeah, for those unaware, the pull, percentage of fly balls being pulled throughout the league is usually around 25%, 26%. So being
Hmm.
at 41% is a very good sign because you're hitting it to the
I mean, Isak Paredes is the gold standard, and he's usually at like 50%.
yeah,
So
exactly.
41% is not too far behind.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But yeah, you're hitting it to the shorter end of the park, and usually, like the league average for pulled batted balls has, I think, 5 more miles per hour of average exit velocity than non-pulled batted balls. So, that's why, you
You're also
know,
going for a shorter fence. If you're hitting at the
yeah,
center, you need to hit it 400 to be out.
yeah,
And
exactly.
if you hit it 380, it's probably caught.
Yeah, if anyone's ever played slow pitch softball, think about how much more powerful you feel when you pull the ball as opposed to when you hit it to the opposite field. It's
Yeah,
it's sort of like that.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, anything more on the Guardians positional change?
Um, no, I mean, I think Santana definitely adds an element of this lineup that maybe it doesn't have, right? Like he is the kind of guy that is more that new age approach, right? Like take a lot of walks, get on base. And his batting average, his OEP is relatively average because he only hit 238 last year. But we've talked a lot, pretty at length this past year about the approach that Stephen Vogt took to the offense last year and how different it was for at least the first half of the season. I think Carlos Santana maybe reaffirms that commitment. I mean, if you look at him and Josh Naylor, I think Naylor's ground ball rate last year was like 8% higher than Santana's,
Um, Probably. Yeah,
right?
I think Naylor was around
He was
46% or
around
something like that.
46%, and Santana's at 38%, or was
Yeah,
at 38%, which was a Statcast era low for him, by the way. Um,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's always a risk when you're adding a 39-year-old to your roster, regardless. Um, but Carlos Santana has not really dropped off too severely in any particular areas, right? If you look at all the underlying numbers, like his chase rate was 23% last year, which is right in line with where it's been for pretty much every season of his career throughout the Statcast era, at least. His whiff rate was 23% last year. It was a Statcast era high, but everything's been around 19 to 22% before that. So it's not like it's terribly down. His average exit velocity last year was higher than it was in 2023, 2020, 2018, 2017, and tied with 2015. So, I mean, he can still hit the ball. His hard hit rate is similar to how it has been throughout the Statcast era. Strikeout rate isn't going anywhere. Walk rate has gone down, but it's still very good. Uh, I know he's 39, but there's not really much of a reason to believe that Carlos Santana has actually declined too severely compared to what he's really been his entire career.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And he's had a weird defensive renaissance as well. It's just
Yep.
utterly insane that he put
Yeah.
together 14 outs above average last year.
Which
And
is which is mostly a first base thing.
yeah, I mean, certainly like first base, in regard, in terms of metrics and just how we know it is in general, it's the easiest defensive position to play. So even if you are an elite defender, according, with it won't impact, it won't rise or wins above replacement necessarily. Whereas, if you do that at shortstop, it's going to do it like crazy. Um, but uh, but yeah, like I think wins above replacement would value a somewhat below average shortstop and an elite defensive first baseman about the same defensively. So like, yeah, I mean, it's not like he's as defensively valuable as, say, Bobby Witt Jr., but he's certainly more valuable defensively than most other first basemen out there that they could have gotten. So it is, yeah, it is an interesting thing. We'll see if that keeps up at age
Something that
39.
I can't escape the fact that Carlos Santana, when he was a catcher, like in the era in which Statcast Fangraphs took framing into account, said he's one of the worst to ever do it, basically. And now as a first baseman, they're like, he's actually kind of nice with it, believe it or not.
Yeah, it's certainly
His his defensive runs above average last season was the second most he's put up in a season in his career, behind 2010.
nice his rookie year.
Yeah,
Where he
like
played
I was looking
46
at
games.
his, he's gonna hit a 9,000 career plate appearances this year, most likely. He's 220 away, and he's at 38 career B WAR. So I'm like, what's the Fangraphs WAR looking like if he was a catcher for a lot of his career? It's worse. It's 10 points worse.
Yeah, it's the Salvi effect.
Because I was gonna say, I was like, do we have like a Brian McCann, Russell Martin on our hands? No,
No,
we
not at
don't.
all. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think the big development, what everyone's talking about with Carlos Santana this year is will he get to 40 WAR and be an available grid guess for like
True.
for a niche
For oh, that'd be so huge, dude.
like Royals or Brewers or
Yeah, for
Mariners.
Pirates,
Yeah,
Seattle,
yeah, that
even
would
like
be
the Phillies. I mean, really any team other than Cleveland.
yeah, that's like a nice like sub 2% right there.
Yeah, he's two B WAR away, which he had
Yeah.
2.5 last year.
He's the active
Um,
career leader in walks. So shout out
is
to
he?
him. Yeah.
He is. I'm
1278.
seeing that. Yeah,
1278 on the
it's
man.
italic.
That's correct.
A career 354 on base percentage. That's pretty
Um
good. That's solid.
it's pretty solid.
He's
Yeah.
gonna be, like the meme of like the Jared Weaver baseball reference page where it's like, this is what my friends send me at 12:40 in the morning, and it's just that, and it says like, dude had a solid career. That's
Yeah.
Carlos Santana. Like, dude really did have a solid career.
Yeah, he was good. He was pretty good. Yeah, like over 300 homers, over 300 doubles, and a 354 on base percentage over
I will never forget his 2020 slash line.
oh yeah, that was insane. Yeah, it was
One night, it's really something that you could only have in 2020. He played all 60 games, had 47 walks, which led only led the American League, didn't lead Major League Baseball, but he slashed 199, 349, 350 for a 699 OPS.
yeah, that's if hell yeah was a slash line.
This is what Gen Z wants out of baseball players.
I don't I don't want to see you try and hit the ball. I
This is
just
this
want
is
you to
what
walk.
peak performance looks like. You might not appreciate it, but this is this is the ideal hitter.
Drag out an at bat as long as possible and make it a plate appearance. Don't make it an at bat.
Irritate the pitcher and do nothing else.
Yes. But yeah, that's the Josh Naylor trade and the Carlos Santana signing. One last first base transaction to go over. Came through the
A
news
couple hours
cycle
ago.
a few hours ago. Yes, as you mentioned. Nathaniel Lowe gets traded from the Texas Rangers to the Washington Nationals. Nationals sent over a left-handed reliever. Forget his
Robert
first name.
Garcia,
Robert Garcia. Um,
who is pretty good. I mean, he's 28. He just had, I think, his rookie season, but still very interesting.
Yeah, what did you think about this action from the Rangers and Nationals?
I mean, my immediate reaction, and maybe I rescind this. Oh, we also need to talk about Jesus Luzardo. That happened today. But anyway, um, my initial reaction, which I think I might walk back now, unless I'm right, of course, was okay. The Rangers are signing Pete Alonso because I thought like, why are you going to free up a spot on your roster if you're not going for someone, right? Like we literally just saw the Guardians trade Josh Naylor and then minutes later sign Carlos Santana. If the Rangers are trading Nathaniel Lowe for a left-handed reliever, they gotta have a plan for where they're gonna do at first base, and it's probably Pete Alonso. Well, I forgot that Jake Berger was traded over. That did happen. Which I still think could mean they're trying to sign Alonso. I don't think it means they're just settling with Jake Berger at first and locking that in on opening day, but it's definitely an option.
Right, right. Yeah, it's certainly interesting. Because yeah, I mean Nathaniel Lowe is yeah, he's been a productive member of the Rangers the past couple years.
Hmm.
I can tell you for certain, over the past 2 years, he's seventh among current first basemen in F4, and has a 117 OPS plus and the third most outs above average since the start of 2023. So yeah, I mean he's been good. He's been valuable, considering the position he plays. But yeah, I mean, I just looked at, Robert Garcia's Savant page, and like, at least in the Savant world, he looks he looks really, really good. He looks like a
Yeah, at first glance,
yeah,
things don't look bad.
yeah, exactly. I mean, nearly a 30% strikeout rate this past year over, nearly 60 innings, a 3.1% barrel rate, 2.53 expected ERA. That expected ERA is 97th percentile in baseball. So yeah, I mean that's a good arm to get. But yeah, you're giving up 2 years of a pretty valuable starting first baseman. So yeah, from the looks of it, it looks fairly even. And you certainly get why maybe each trade made these, or why each side made this trade.
Yeah, no, I mean it's if you look at the Rangers roster right now, they're obviously coming off of a down year. They're in a weak division. You look at the lineup and you're like, I mean, that looks pretty complete. You look at the rotation, you think, okay, a DeGrom comeback would be huge. They have five options clearly, but then you look at the bullpen and you're like, oh, and that's where Robert
Yeah.
Garcia comes in.
Yeah, I mean the bullpen, the year they won the World Series, the bullpen was still an issue. Um,
Yeah.
they were, I think that year they were 24th in bullpen ERA, and they still won the World
Well,
Series.
bro, they had Will Smith.
They unfortunately the streak did not continue with Will Smith.
No,
That is
it would have been really funny if it did, but it didn't. He did make the playoffs, but no, did not happen that way. Um, yeah, I mean, I think this is, it fills a positional need while not creating another one. Um, Nate Lowe, what does he have? 2 more years left on his contract?
yes.
That's what I would guess. Yeah. And I mean, from the Nationals' perspective, right? This is a team that has a young core that's up and coming between Abrams, Wood, Cruz, Gore, and a couple others. And Nate Lowe kind of becomes a veteran presence among the, I guess, leaders on that team, right? Like if you think of the middle or the order bats, and you think of the frontline starters on the Nationals, Nate Lowe is now the veteran in that group. And I think that that's something they needed, right? Like, Abrams and Wood and Cruz are fun, but maybe there is some guidance needed there within the lineup, and Nate Lowe, I think, can be a guy that provides that. Right? I mean, it's funny because in I think 2022, it was either 21 or 22. No, it was definitely 22 when I highlighted like, hey, he gets to learn from guys like Simeon and Seager as when I put him down as a player to watch. But now, he's the guy that is leading the young core. So, not only does it, put another bat in a lineup that's trying to be more competitive this year, but it adds, I think, a lot of potential value for the career development of those three plus some others.
Yeah, indeed, indeed. And uh and yeah, yeah, the Rangers definitely need some bullpen help. They were 26th in baseball in bullpen ERA this past year. So yeah, if they feel comfortable with Jake Berger at first base, then I think this deal makes a good bit of sense for them. You know, it's unfortunate to let a guy go who's been sort of now established within that organization. I think he's been there since at least start of 2022, and maybe even before that in like
Hmm.
2021. So I think he's been there for, 3 or 4 years. So I'm sure in the clubhouse it's a little tough for them, but yeah, I think with that back end of the bullpen, it could really help them out. Just having a guy like Garcia who just put up a 24% strikeout minus walk rate. Um, but yeah, I think it seems fairly even. Makes sense for both sides. I don't really have any super hot takes about it, I think.
Yeah, it was definitely a bit shocking for me to see, but yeah, I mean the Rangers do indeed have Jake Berger to fill that spot.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Did we want to acknowledge the
We definitely should.
Jesus Luzardo deal?
Yeah, this happened earlier this morning. It slipped my mind when we were preparing for the show. So
Mhm.
we don't have the seamless transition that we were hoping for, but we do need to talk about Jesus Luzardo getting traded within the division to the Philadelphia Phillies, creating probably the best rotation in baseball, maybe between him, Wheeler, Nola, Suarez, and Christopher Sanchez.
Yeah, I mean, you could have argued that before he was there, but now that even adds an exclamation mark to
Hmm.
that sentiment.
Yeah, I mean, whoever, I mean, I think pretty comfortably, whoever, assuming all five of them make it to opening day, whoever starts game five is going to be the best, five starter in baseball.
Yeah, indeed, indeed.
I think that kind of goes without saying.
Yeah,
The
no.
Phillies, yeah, the Phillies gave up Starlin Caba, who is, I believe, a top 100 prospect on Baseball America. I want to say he was like number 54 or something like that. Let me check what the current top 100 is. Currently, they have Caba, yep, number 54, between Sebastian Wolcott and Nick Kurtz. Um, and then there was another prospect that went in the deal as well.
Um, yeah, I would assume that he had to be of a much lower profile.
Yes, he's Kaba is a shortstop. He's pretty young. He is. It doesn't say here, but yeah, he's a one of the. I'll tell you what BA has. So one of the best defensive shortstops in the minor leagues. Kaba is a switch hitter with an offensive profile based on his ability to put the ball in play. A plus runner, he is a threat to steal a base, and he shows an approach to run higher OBPs. Kaba has a below average power and is not likely to develop much impact. Instead, he'll deliver value with his hit tool and glove, which sounds very Miami Marlins.
Yep, yep, exactly, exactly. Yeah, yeah. Jesus Luzardo, he's definitely coming off a down year and a very unhealthy year. You know, he only accumulated
Emer- yeah, Emerson
66.
Boyd is the other one, and then also a catcher named Paul McIntosh went to Philly as well.
But yeah, Luzardo, 66 and two-thirds innings pitched this past year. You know, every metric, unfortunately, just went in the wrong direction for him pretty much. You know,
Hmm.
strikeout rate went down 6.9 percentage points.
He also was hurt last year.
Yes,
Maybe that was a part of it. Maybe it wasn't.
right. Yeah, and walk rate went up, barrel rate went up, average exit velocity against went up. Um, so yeah, and but yeah, with how kind of out of the blue it was, I think it's fair to assume that that's not going to continue, especially considering that he's only heading into his age 27 season. You know,
Hmm.
it didn't seem like he ever got in a rhythm, in terms of the 5 to 6 days between starts and just consistently going out there, week after week after week and getting out there and having a rhythm because yeah, I think that injury happened, maybe a couple months into the season. They came back, got a few more starts, and it was kind of his workload was very sporadic throughout the year when he was not injured. So I don't really take a whole lot of stock in what he did last year, but you look at the previous two that he had, there were some really good signs and some really good results as well. I mean, he was mid threes ERA both years. You could argue that's lower threes in 2022. But strikeout rates, around 30%. which is really good with walk rates below 10%. So yeah, I mean, like the strikeout and walks look good. He's run into some home run issues before, but overall, in 2022 and 2023, he looked like a very good pitcher. And yeah, this past year was an off year, so I guess the Phillies were just trying to take advantage of that on the trade market.
Yeah, absolutely. I have to wonder what the Phillies' plan is with Taijuan Walker. Are they going to put him in the bullpen? Probably, right? Have
Yeah,
him serve a long reliever type role. That's exactly what they have him in on Fangraphs right now is long reliever Taijuan Walker.
right. I mean, yeah, I mean he's coming off a even worse year
A
than
7.10 ERA in 83.2 innings pitched. That's got to
this.
be like, how rare is that?
I mean, they still have 2 years left on this deal, right?
We have 36 million.
That's great. I remember when we talked
Probably
about
an
that
unmovable
deal.
contract, right?
What was that?
Unmovable, would you say?
Um, oh yeah. At this point, yes.
2 years, 36 million for that.
Yeah, for a guy who just put up an ERA and expected ERA over 7. In
Wow, his expected ERA was over 7 too.
709 was his expected
Oh,
ERA.
oh, he
First,
got unlucky last year.
oh,
He had a 7.10 ERA.
he did get unlucky.
Yeah, I
Despite
mean,
that
okay,
unluckiness.
maybe this is movable. Maybe you can work with this.
Yeah. And he
Would
did
be a
that in
great
83.
would be a great A's move.
Yeah, yep, indeed.
Seven,
83,
okay.
83 and two-thirds innings pitched, with a first percentile expected ERA. Um, so yeah, unfortunate year for him. And yeah, I remember when that deal was handed out, we were like, I can't believe that he got this deal, and I feel
Yeah,
vindicated in that.
pretty vindicated. I think we're feeling pretty good about that. So this is one of 90 seasons uh in baseball history with an ERA above 7 and at least 80 innings pitched. The worst ERA on this list belongs to Steve Bloss of the 1973 Pittsburgh Pirates. I can't believe this. 88 and two-thirds innings pitched with a 9.85 ERA.
That's unreal.
That's insane. He had 8.5 walks per nine.
How do you even get to 88 innings that way?
How
That's
bad was the I mean, how bad was the 70? They were 80 and 82. They weren't even a bad team.
No, they were 2 years removed from winning a World Series.
Yeah, literally two. How do they let this guy get so many innings? He had negative 3.9 wins above replacement. Uh, led the league with 12 hit batsmen, 27 strikeouts in this span, by the way. I know that strikeouts weren't exactly the biggest thing going in 1973, but uh, he had 84 walks in 88 and two-thirds innings.
That's absurd. But
That is crazy. Somehow went 3-9. That feels way more than he deserved.
yeah, he had that Brandon Morrow year. Like
Yeah, that print. Shout out to how do I pronounce this? Is it Canaan, Connecticut? Canaan?
New Canaan.
No, it's just Canaan or
Is it is
Canaan.
it with is it with two A's?
Canaan.
Yeah, I think I know New Canaan is pronounced New Canaan. It's he's
Okay. There's
how
not a new in front of it. It's he went to Housatonic Valley Regional High School in Falls Village, Connecticut, if you're familiar.
um yeah, that's probably a little bit far from me,
He was
but I've heard
he
of
was an
Housatonic.
all-star and a Cy Young runner-up the year before.
Um All-Star and Cy Young runner-up the year before. Yeah,
And he went on
I
to
guess
and he
I
went on
guess
to put
that's
up
why they were so patient with him.
yeah, they were like, he's due.
Yeah.
Eventually he's gotta find it, right? Eventually he's gotta find the zone.
Yes,
I
indeed.
know he's let me look at these game logs. This has got to be something. He was out of the league after the next year. Uh, all right, let's see. So he had 8 games with at least 5 walks, 3 games with at least 6, 13 games with at least 4 walks out of 23 total. Uh, he had Wow, he had one game with 0 walks, but he only pitched 2 innings. Uh, yeah, he did not. He did pitch. What a line this is right here. I know this is 1973, so this is relatively average for the time being. But I mean, on May 4th, 1973, 9 innings pitched, 7 hits, 6 earned runs, 6 walks, 4 strikeouts.
Um, Wait, say that again. I'm sorry. I was trying to figure out where Falls Village is.
Okay.
Apologies.
On May 4th, 1973, 9 innings pitched, 7 hits, 6 runs, 6 walks, 4 strikeouts.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's
Some
you
of
can
the,
get
I
away
mean,
with
this is
that.
probably this is probably the most brutal performance that I'm seeing here on June 13th. 1 and a third innings pitched, 5 hits, 7 runs, 6 walks, no strikeouts.
Yeah, that'll blow
Four
up your
four
phone.
outs recorded and 6 walks, and also 5 hits.
Yeah, I wonder what his expected ERA was.
Yeah, on
Probably
that
not
day.
great.
What's
Um,
they don't have game score if you didn't start a game. That's tough. He didn't start this game.
but yeah, shout out to him. He's kind of from the boondocks of Connecticut. It's the Northwest area. It's fairly near New York. Um,
Okay. Oh, okay,
so
okay. Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah, started from the bottom. Now he's, a 10-year MLB veteran. Um,
Who did finish runner up in Cy Young. I
he
I think
did.
we should mention that because this entire segment has been talking about how profoundly absurdly bad his 1973 was. He was also very good in 72. He had a 135 ERA plus 249 ERA in 249 and 2/3 innings pitched. That would lead the league by a mile today. If he did that today, everyone over the age of 60 would talk nonstop about how every pitcher needs to be like this guy.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. I mean, they were doing that with Sandy Alcantara for a little bit.
Yeah, but Sandy Alcantara wasn't putting up a 1.39 strikeout to walk rate ratio.
True, true. Um, yeah, but yeah, I mean, in the second rendition of the History series, Steve Bloss will be considered for what we do there.
In 1972, like we would have put Steve Bloss as like we would have put him outside of our top 10 best pitchers and would have gotten yelled at and then felt so vindicated
Yeah, no,
when he went on to put up just the worst year anyone has ever seen.
it's like,
He also
oh my God.
yeah, he had 11.1 hits per nine on top of the walks as well. A whip of 2.177 over 88 innings.
Yeah, all that to say, Taiwan
Jesus
Walker is not
Luzardo.
far from
Yeah.
that.
Well, I mean, the actual point was Jesus Luzardo.
All that to say, Taiwan Walker is not far from that, and that's something we worry about. And that's why he might not be in the starting rotation for the Phillies.
Yeah. He'll be
But
making spot starts, I'm sure.
yeah, he'll, obviously injuries happen. We never root for them, but if an injury does
Injuries
happen,
happen, double headers happen.
yeah, exactly. So he'll find his way as a starter at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, probably not to start the year, unless one of those injuries is in spring training, unfortunately. Um, but yeah, yeah. I think the Phillies are trying to catch, in the stock market, you catch it on the dip when the stock is
Mm,
down.
yeah.
The fact that they still gave up a top 60 prospect, I think that's a good move on the Marlins part. Like they did not sell too
Hmm.
low on him. Because this is still a
If
27
you
year
if
old.
that package was given up last year, not too many people would have batted an eye at it when his value was significantly higher.
Yeah, yeah. Like you're still trading for a 27-year-old who's 2 years removed
Good.
from a 3.58 ERA in a full year, with, a sub four expected, or and you're yeah,
Yeah.
a guy who's 3 years removed from a 30% strikeout rate over, 170 innings. So yeah, and last year I think can be taken with a very small grain of salt. I think, his performance will get back, it's very capable of getting back to that level that he was
Yep.
before that. Potentially better, who knows? But yeah, though, yeah, anything more on the Jesus Luzardo trade?
No, I think that's all I had. Now we can get into what we've been waiting for and what maybe everyone's been waiting for.
Yeah, sorry if you were excited about first baseman, sorry, but Steve Bloss was just too interesting to us.
To
So
pass up. Yeah.
we had to stall for a little bit, get that runtime up. But yeah, so yeah, it's our second year of doing positional ranks. So yeah, we'll probably reference throughout the episode where we had these folks last year because you know, I most of them I know 9 of my 10 were on my list last year. I think 9 of your 10 were on your list last year. But yeah, if you but yeah, just to preface, this is a list for how we think they will do in 2025. So a lot of it is projection and taking past performance and trying to estimate what it will mean for the upcoming season. It's not necessarily based on what they have done and more about what they could potentially will and can do. But yeah, so anything more before we want to get into this list?
No, let's talk about some first baseman here.
All right, yeah. Who do you have at number 10?
Yeah, for me, number 10 was the most difficult position to fill. Obviously, because it means you have to leave people off, right? And I was between three people for my number 10 spot. Two of them we previously mentioned in this episode were Josh Naylor and Nathaniel Lowe. But I didn't go with either of them. So shout out to both of them, both honorable mentions, both guys that I easily could have put in the top 10. But my heart is still with Vinny Pasquantino. I still believe. I just can't deny the combination of potential power plus contact abilities. Right, Vinny Pasquantino last year he was having a pretty good year before the injury bug hit him for the rest of the season. In what like July or August or whatever it was. He still put up a 262, 315, 446 slug for the identical OPS that he had in 2023 at 761. I still think there is a lot of potential in this bat. I playing in Kansas City obviously doesn't help him, but he's been braving the elements regardless. He hit 19 home runs last year with 554 plate appearances and was very durable bat for the time that he was in there. Like I said, the power potential. He's obviously a guy that hits the ball very well. He pulls it a lot as well. I believe he has around like a 30+% rate of fly balls being pulled, or at least that's what he had last year. I obviously really like that and will make it known how much I like that every time a player has that kind of thing. And like obviously he's going to be playing in Kansas City this year, so I can't just pretend like that, that caveat doesn't exist. But I think regardless, he's a guy that shoots the ball into the gaps very well, along with the power potential. Um, the walks could be up a little bit. They went down 2.4% from last year. But the strikeout rate and the whiff rate are both top 4 percentile in Major League Baseball, along with a very good hard hit rate, along with very good expected numbers, along with a 91 mile per hour average exit velocity. And also plus defense, he had 3 outs above average last year as well at first base. So I can't ignore what I think I could see from Vinny Pasquantino this year, and for that reason, he snuck onto my list at number 10. He was at number 9 last year, so he wasn't. He is dropping a bit from where I previously had him, but I had to keep him on the list.
Right. Yeah, it's very understandable considering a lot of the just underlying potential that he has and he displayed in that brief rookie season that he had. I mean, it was like the numbers he was putting up that year and like the combination of contact and power that he was able to display was at such a young age was pretty crazy. So it's hard not to hold on to that. My number 10 is someone we previously talked about this episode. It is Nathaniel Lowe. Because yeah, he's just been consistently good these past 2 years, and he's I think heading into his age 30 season here. So it's not like age is really waning against him. He was not ranked on my list last year, but yeah, he's earned his way on because just because of the consistency. Not a guy who's really had a breakout year. in his career, like at least in terms of, garnering MVP votes, I think. But over the past 2 years, he is seventh among current first basemen in FWAR, has also put up a 117 OPS plus and the third most outs above average since the start of 2023. So yeah, it's not like I can't really identify a particular underlying metric that I really enjoy about him, um, or some kind of niche thing. It's just overall whole package player. He's been solid, and I expect that same level of production for this upcoming year, which is why I have him in the top 10. Who do you have at number 9?
Yeah, number nine, I have a guy who was at number seven last year, is dropping off a little bit. And this certainly could be subject to change for obvious reasons, but I am actually putting Pete Alonso in my number nine spot. I was really hoping for a big contract year for him last year, and he did improve in some areas. His batting average went up by 23 points. His OBP went up briefly, or not briefly, but slightly by 11 points. But there was quite a dip in slugging percentage. He hit 12 less home runs in 40 plus more plate appearances, or 37 more plate appearances. Um, so that was a concern for me. I think the biggest problem that I had last year was the rise in ground ball rate and the subtraction in fly ball rate. His ground ball rate went from 36% to 42% last year. His fly ball rate went from 35% to 28%. So, Pete Alonso, it's obviously very clear exactly what his offensive profile is. He's a guy that will hit a lot of home runs, and that's pretty much where most of his value is with his power. There's not too many other strong hit tools. There's also not too many other strong, just general tools in general, right? I mean, the defense is easy to overlook as a flaw in first baseman because it's so common, but Pete Alonso is especially problematic over there. At least that's what every metric has said for most of his career. He had -9 outs above average at first last year, which is not great. And on top of that, everything else is right. The contact numbers have never really been there. The base running numbers have never really been there. But he is very consistent with his power, and I think there's for that reason a good reason to at least keep him on the list. For me, he's at number 9 this year, and obviously, certainly this could change depending on where he goes in free agency. If he finds himself in maybe a more hitter-friendly ballpark, I'd be inclined to maybe move him up the list, or down. Probably not down. I think 9 is probably the floor for him for me right now. But yeah, I have Pete Alonso in my number 9 spot.
Yes, and yeah, I will match you with that. I have Pete Alonso at number 9 as well. Because yeah, this is above replacement radio, baby. If you want to hear about Pete Alonso being a top 5 first baseman in baseball, you got to go to another podcast. And I would have felt like my Pete Alonso hater status would be sent from gold to at least silver, if you had him below my rankings. So glad we agree that he's number 9. And yeah, I'd say that kind of playfully. I don't really have anything against Pete Alonso personally. It's just people look at his home run total and think that he's as good as the next 40 home run guy, and that's just not the case. So yeah, in terms of why I have him at number 9, over the last 2 years, he ranks 8th among current first basemen in FWAR, and I think that took I think his ranking was lower in 2024 than it was in 2023. And yeah, you mentioned that ground ball rate and fly ball rate. That ground ball rate was a career high. That fly ball rate was a career low. In what has been a 6-year career for Pete Alonso so far. So, that's an alarming sign, and you see it you see it with the results. He had the lowest home run total of his career in non-2020 seasons, and then also the
Which was still
defensive.
34.
Yeah, he's still at 34, but that was the lowest home run total of his career. And 34 home run hitter, yeah, that's really good. However, you have to consider with Pete Alonso's like so much, like pretty much all his offense comes from the ability to hit the ball out of the ballpark.
Mm-hmm.
He's not gonna single and W to death. He does not have that ability, and we've seen like numbers about that. I think among 45 home run seasons, he had the lowest in total bases for 45 home run seasons when he hit 46 in 2022, or no, it might have been 2023.
It was 2023.
2023. So, but yeah, all in all, like yeah, you look at the home runs and it's like, yeah, that's awesome, but and you know, he's a guy with OPS plus and weighted runs created plus. He's roughly 20 to 25% above league average in offense, and a very big negative on defense and on the base paths. You know, he had -9 outs above average in 2024. And that's also -9 over the last 2 years. So it's not like he had a good defensive year before that either. So yeah, you know, he's a all that being said, he's still a top 10 first baseman. He's great. Or he's not. He has the potential to be great. He's still a pretty quality and productive first baseman. Just not as much as I think some people like to think he is. But yeah, I haven't at number 9. Who do you have at number 8?
Number 8 is perhaps where the hot takes start flying in for me. I mentioned, or you mentioned, that I have 9 out of 10 returners on my top 10 list this year, which means that I have one newcomer, and that comes at number 8. It's a guy that we talked about earlier in the episode. It is Carlos Santana. I put him on my list this year because I really do feel optimistic, despite being 39 years old and kind of sneaking onto the list for the first time, that he can put up a top 10 season at first base this year. In fact, he did so last year. Last year, he had, I believe, 4 wins above replacement. It was either 3 or 4. But regardless, it was, I believe, top 5 for the position entirely. So I feel very good about Carlos Santana going into this year. He had 3.0 F4 at first base last year, which ranked 4th among first basemen behind, without spoiling it, the 3 guys that I have in my top 3. So maybe I'm even doing Carlos Santana a disservice by putting him at 8, but obviously the defense is just one part of it. It certainly is a huge part of it. 14 outs above average. In debate with Christian Walker for the best first baseman in the league. On top of that, he's also putting up relatively league average offensive seasons, guided by a lot of walks and also a low strikeout rate. He did strike out only 16% of the time last year. He also isn't chasing a lot, which he never has. And all the expected stuff and all of the batted ball metrics are relatively normal. He does, in fact, pull the ball, like I mentioned, 41% of the time on fly balls, which I really like. I think it'll play very well in Cleveland, perhaps better than it played in Minnesota last year, especially because, there was those talk about those wind tunnels going out to right field in Cleveland last year. So maybe that'll help him when he's hitting left-handed. I don't know. I think Carlos Santana just has oddly enough, very sustainable characteristics despite going into his age 39 season. Obviously, there's always risks that come with age. We saw it with someone like Paul Goldschmidt last year. But I think Carlos Santana can still put up a very strong season next year with the Cleveland Guardians, the team that he is returning to for now the 3rd time.
Right. Yeah, it's yeah, the third stint with the Guardians. It's pretty crazy. But yeah, and by the way, I had Pete Alonso number 7 last year. I forgot to mention.
As did I. I forgot to mention that as well. But yes, I had him 7.
No, I think
so. We're always locked in on Pete Alonso. I think we had him like one spot apart on the 50s too.
I did. Well, you had him 48, and I didn't have him on the list. So I guess.
Okay.
And it's up to our imagination where I would have Pete Alonso.
Right.
But yeah, my number 8 is someone who I had at number 5 last year. It is Yandy Diaz, who unfortunately had a big drop in production this past year in 2024. And yeah, it's interesting looking at Yandy Diaz because it's not like one big thing changed and you can identify and be like, oh, that's what happened is, he did that and that's why his OPS plus went down 41 points. It was kind of incrementally just over a period of time. Just everything got a little bit worse. Everything significant got a little bit worse. His ground ball rate and pop-up rate went up. His line drive rate and fly ball rate went down. His average exit velocity and barrel rate went down. And as a result of that, his OPS plus went from a great 157 to a, mildly good 116. And that's a 116 OPS plus is a guy who is who is, you know, a big negative on the base paths and not necessarily a positive on defense either. So that definitely drags him down the list a little bit. But yeah, I do have a certain amount of optimism for him still. You know, a 116 OPS plus is still pretty good, as I mentioned. And yeah, he still had an average exit velocity in the 92nd percentile. So that upside is still there. It's not like physically he just faltered and it seems like he's breaking apart. It just seems like there were some flaws in what he was doing last year, and that led to um, that led to an imperfect 2024 season, whereas, 2022 and 2023 were very, very productive years for him. I still think he has the potential to do that, but because of the fact that everything just got a little bit worse last year, I bring him from 5 down to 8. Who do you have at number 7?
Yeah, at number 7, this is where I put ARR alum Tristan Casas, who I put at 8 last year. And I am rising him on the list, not necessarily because of anything he did, or because of just people that went down. 2023 was a year where, or 2024 was a year where not much went right for Tristan Casas. He missed a lot of time with a what was it, a hip injury, a shoulder injury? No, it was like a rib cage injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it was. Um, yeah, only finished with 243 plate appearances last year, and there was a lot that sort of went wrong to a degree. First of all, his strikeout rate went from 25.1% to 25.1% to 31.7%, a 6.6% increase. I believe that is. Not to mention his line drive rate also went down from 25.6% to 21.5%, a 4% decrease. And his ground ball went from 36% to 43%, a 7% increase. Yeah, he played a lot less. He struck out more. His batted ball metrics were slightly worse, and yet he ended with a 799 OPS. You know, if there's obviously a lot that could have gone better for Tristan Casas, and I can only imagine what those final numbers really could have looked like if we got some of that potential more out of him than maybe we should have. I feel very optimistic still that in a full season, we can see a really good year from Tristan Casas. We've already kind of seen that he needs some time to really get going. That's what happened in 2023. And in that season, he was a top 5 hitter in Major League Baseball throughout the second half of the season. So I really still do believe in this potential. He's only going into his age 25, I believe it is, season next year. Yeah, age 25 season, still very young. And, we're still waiting for that full year of we saw it in full potential. And I still think that very much exists within the realm of possibility for Tristan Casas. And I just can't let go of what the potential might be, kind of like Vinny Pasquantino. I have him at 7. I think he has easy top 5 potential, maybe even top 3 potential in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, we certainly saw that the second half of 2023. But yeah, I think you had him 8 last year.
I did.
I had him number 10 last year, and yeah, I'm matching you once again. He is my number 7. He's my number 7 first baseman in baseball heading into 2024. Or heading into 2025, excuse me. But yeah, like with Tristan Casas, you can look at it as a variety of ways. You can see just last year, like, okay, it's a guy who played 63 games. He had an 800 OPS. He was a negative on defense. It's nothing too crazy, but I kind of choose to look at, because of what he's done and also how young he is, I kind of look at the potential of what he brings. And yes, like, since the start of the second half of 2023, he still has elite numbers in that span. Out of 308 hitters with 400 plus plate appearances in that span, Casas has the 11th highest slugging and 12th highest OPS. And yeah, he didn't have the greatest year, but still he put up a 120 OPS plus through injuries. And yeah, just kept being productive as an offensive player. If he had better defense, he would certainly be up this list, I think, just based on his potential. But yeah, and also I'm just kind of trying to learn from I'm trying to learn lessons from some of my failures from last year. I think in terms of ranking people, I think I ranked a little bit too much on past performance instead of future potential. So with Tristan Casas, like, he's a 25-year-old with lots of power. He can hit a ball like 470 feet. He has a great eye, has one of the lower chase rates in baseball. So yeah, I think he's just loaded with potential. So leaving him at like 9 or 10 seems like it could just bite me in the end. So I figure I put him at 7 because yeah, he has more potential than some of those guys who maybe had better seasons last year, but maybe don't have the exact potential for 2025 that Tristan Casas does. Who do you have in your number 6 hole?
Yeah, number 6. This is where I put Yandy Diaz. You put him at 8. I put him at 4 last year, and I kind of made myself the Yandy Diaz guy last year, and paid the price for it in the season. He put up 1.9 F4 and like a 116 weighted runs created plus or something like that. It wasn't a great year for Yandy Diaz, but many of the underlying metrics stay the same. Unfortunately, the ground ball rate did increase. It went up to 55%, down or up from 52%. The fly ball rate went from 20.8% to 17.8%. The line drive rate went down by 2.5% as well. So there's a lot that didn't go right. The pull rate went down even further. It was at 27% last year. It went down to 26.5%. And I believe like 11% of his fly balls were pulled, something crazy like that. So a lot of the batted ball flaws were still there and got even worse. But he's still, first of all, like he's a guy that had a high bat speed and a high squared up rate. Usually those things are mutually exclusive, or are not mutually exclusive. I don't know what the actual saying is. Usually you have one and not the other. You usually don't have both on the good side, but that's still what Yandy Diaz had last year. He had an average bat speed of 73.3 miles an hour, and the average is around 72 miles per hour. And he still had a 93% squared up percentile squared up rate at 31.9%. So he's still hitting the ball in the barrel. He's still doing what he needs to do while keeping that strikeout rate very low. The walk rate did go down a bit last year, which I am a little disappointed by. But I still think there is so much potential here. The biggest thing that I'm looking at, Yandy Diaz has made his living. Oh my goodness. Yandy Diaz has made his living on hitting ground balls up the middle, right? Whether it's line drive ground balls, whether it's balls that just sneak through. He's done that and made his entire career on it in the past. In 2023, 26.8% of his total batted balls were straightaway ground balls. He hit 302 on them, and this with a 299 expected batting average. In 2024, 27.5% of his total batted balls were straightaway ground balls up the middle, and even higher percent. He hit 177 on them with a 255 expected batting average. So the expected batting average did go down by 44 points from last year, but the batting average itself went from 302 to 177. And the exit velocity on these ground balls didn't really go down too much. In fact, I think it stayed the same or maybe even went up. But he was very unlucky on these last year. So I do believe that was a fluke, that it can bring that can bring its way back. And as long as that happens, at least to whatever the mean is supposed to be, Yandy Diaz could bring his way back up to maybe like a 125, maybe even 130 weighted runs created plus hitter, which is still far below where he was in 2023, where he was at like 160. But I moved him down on the list for a reason, obviously. So I still think there's a lot of potential in that bat. Maybe playing in a minor league park will be helpful for him next year. Who knows what kind of impact the George Steinbrenner Field effect will have. We'll have to wait and see. But I still think there's a lot of potential with Yandy Diaz, and I'm keeping him in my top 6, putting him at number 6.
Right. Yeah, so yeah, my number 6 is your number 10. I have Vinny Pasquantino at number 6. What I kind of did is I kind of grouped him and Cassis together just because I kind of felt similarly about them in that
Was he on your list last year?
Pasquantino, he was number 9 on my list last year. And the reason why I say I grouped them together is because I had him 9 and I had Cassis 10. Now this year they're 6 and 7. And I kind of grouped them together because they were a little bit underwhelming. They were each a little bit underwhelming last year, maybe for a little bit of different reasons. I know Cassis was a little bit more out of his control, but a little bit of underwhelming seasons, but have that potential, and also have youth on their side. Pasquantino's only heading into his age 27 season, so he still has time to really maximize his potential here. And I think because of that potential, I have to bring him up to number 6. And partially, he didn't bring himself up. other players brought themselves down. So it's not necessarily that I think Vinny Pasquantino improved his case, just others maybe dropped theirs down a little bit. But in terms of why I'm more optimistic about Pasquantino than maybe some others are, is he was, despite having somewhat underwhelming numbers, he was 70th percentile or higher in expected batting average, expected slugging, average exit velocity, and hard hit rate. And he was also 90th percentile or higher in squared up rate, whiff rate, and strikeout rate, which all three of those numbers are just kind of showing that you're intelligently doing the right things, just in terms of whether it be technique or just being smart about your hitting. Vinny Pasquantino is doing those things. So I think just doing that and also being 70th, above 70th percentile in average exit velocity, that can garner some really good results for you. So I have to rely on that potential, considering that he is heading into his age 27 season. And yeah, like I said with Cassis, I'm trying to learn from my mistakes from last year and not ignore youth, because there's a lot of potential with a lot more potential with guys in their mid 20s and their mid 30s. So I'm gonna stick with my guns on Pasquantino. He's my number 6 first baseman heading into 2025. Who is your number 5?
Yeah, this is I don't know. This is an interesting one. I had him at number 2 last year, um, which felt the most appropriate, but there was a down year for Matt Olson in 2024. So I put him at number 5. Um, 2023 looks more like the outlier than 2024 was. And I think he's better than what he was last year. I definitely don't think he's going to put up a sub 800 OPS again. Whatever happened last year, I'm not just too sure what that was, but I do feel very confident that he can get his way back up to maybe like a 130 or so. Um, Whatever that may look like. But regardless, there's obviously a lot of things that happened last year that were some downgrades. His average exit velocity went down over 2 miles an hour. His strikeout rate went up slightly. His walk rate went down by 4%. His barrel rate went down quite a bit. It went from 16.4% to 12.4% in terms of per batted ball, um, which obviously wasn't great. His fly ball rate also went down from 34.4% to 30.3%, a 4-point drop. But there still was some encouragement. His line drive rate went up by 5%, which was good. His ground ball rate went down by 3%. There's still a lot of potential there. I still think he's going to, like I said, put up a better year than he did last year, but I don't know how close he can really get to 2023. That feels like a season we might never see again from him, which is no fault of his. That just shows how ridiculous that season was. 54 home runs and near 1,000 OPS in 720 plate appearances. That's very hard to replicate. But yeah, I still think there's a lot of potential coming from Matt Olson, and I'm putting him at number 5.
Right, right, right. Yeah, my number 5 is a guy we previously talked about in this episode. He just signed with Houston. I'm talking about Christian Walker, who, like, I feel like is just permanently going to be number 5 or 6 in our lists forever.
Mm-hmm.
He's just he's just fixated in this list. Well, actually, he's gonna be higher on your list, I'm sure. But Christian Walker, he's been, and you've referenced this before, he's been the exact same guy for 3 consecutive years, pretty much, except he was out for a few weeks with an injury this past year. But yeah, the past 3 years, Christian Walker has had an OPS plus between 120 and 125 every single year, and had a Gold Glove all 3 of those years. I think he had a Gold Glove all 3 years.
Yes.
Yeah. Uh, just double checking. Yeah, Gold Glover 3 years in a row. OPS plus between 120 and 125 all 3 years in a row. So he's been the same guy. Heading into his age 34 season, shouldn't expect too much of a fall off if there is one. So I'm just gonna bank on the consistency. I don't think in terms of potential, I think there's some guys maybe below him on this list that have more potential than him. But in terms of what I expect this year and what has been happening, I gotta roll with Christian Walker as number 5. Who do you have at number 4?
Yeah, at number 4, this is where I put Christian Walker. I put him at number 6 last year. So he and Yandy Diaz are switching places from where they both were in last year's rankings. I think the move to Houston is going to uplift him quite a bit. Like I mentioned, I like that he's going to be playing at that field more than I liked him at Arizona's. I can't ignore a 3 mile per hour increase in average exit velocity between two seasons, going from 88 miles per hour to 91.2 miles per hour. Like that is, if you do that, you're rising in my rankings. I don't care what else you did. Like I can't help but think, okay, if this is, even if this is, even if he goes, if he cuts that in half, if he splits the middle there, it's a 1.5% or 1.5 mile per hour increase between the 2 years, right? Like I can't just ignore something like that because you don't see a 3 mile per hour increase every year. In fact, it was the second highest increase among all qualifiers last year, with Ketel Marte being third on that list. So there was something happened in Arizona where they figured out how to hit the ball harder, which was awesome. Not to mention his hard hit rate went up by nearly 8%. His ground ball rate went down, line drive rate went up, and his pull rate actually went up all the way from 40.6% to 41%. Not a high rise, but I mean, if you can go up from 40, I really like that. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier, Houston is going to play to himself better than Arizona did. An estimated 28 home runs in Houston last year, 25 in Arizona. I think, he's going to be playing with a lot of solid defenders in that infield between Jeremy Pena, Altuve, and Isaac Paredes. I think Christian Walker has potential to get even better in Houston than he was in Arizona. If all the underlying metrics stay where they are, if the fielding stays where it is, I think he can only go up from there. So I have him in my number 4 spot.
Yep. And yeah, by the way, I had him at number 6 last year. I think you had him at number 5, or
I have him at number 6.
you had him at number 6 as well.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Christian Walker. Love to give some Walker love. I think MLB Network had him at 9 last year, which was such an abomination.
So yeah, we were more correct on that than they were.
Yes, indeed. So yeah, my number 4, we flip-flop 4 and 5. I have Matt Olson at number 4. He was my number 2 first baseman in baseball last year.
Naturally.
And I will say I'm trying to resist the masculine urge to buy into the every other year theory. This man
That is true.
This man loves odd years.
2021 was a nice
one. Because yeah, in in every single odd year of his career, his OPS plus has increased over 20 points from the previous year. So literally every single odd year of his career, and he's had I think 8, or I think he's had like 4 of them, or 3 or 4 of them. So I don't know, a 20-point increase in OPS plus is pretty crazy, and considering how low his OPS plus was last year, I certainly could see him doing that again. But yeah, this is more of a vibe pick because I just have a tough time believing that Matt Olson is the guy he was last year. And yeah, I would agree that it would be difficult to expect him to put up a 993 OPS again and 54 home runs. I don't think that's necessarily who Matt Olson is either, but I expect that, average exit velocity and barrel rate to balance out. I expect him to, get over the 30 home run mark once again. And also what was encouraging is his defense increased, or his defensive performance increased from 2023 to 2024. He went from -5 to +4, outs above average. So, even in, that was all kind of muddled by the fact that he was a worse offensive performer, but he did bring more defensive value last year. And then also I think just things are going to balance out. Matt Olson is certainly better than what he showed last year, and I think he's gonna display that ability in 2025. Who do you have as your number 3?
At number 3, this is where I put Bryce Harper on my list. I had him at 3 last year. I'm keeping him there this year. Bryce Harper has done a lot of amazing things in his career. He was on the cover of Sports Illustrated at age 16. He was the number 1 draft pick, received more hype than any prospect in a long time. 1 Rookie of the Year, 2-time MVP. He's lived up to the hype in every way except for winning a World Series. but maybe the most amazing thing is making everyone forget that he was playing first base, which
Yeah.
I mean that in a good way, to be very clear,
Right.
right?
Right.
Like he moved to first base very abruptly, and he's pretty good at it. I mean, he had 8 outs above average last year, and had his best defensive runs above average season in a non 2020 year uh, since 2019 in 2024. Uh, like I'm very amazed with how well he adjusted to the position, while also maintaining the same offensive structure. Right, his OPS was basically identical to what it was in 2023. He did decrease his OBP, but he increased his slugging by roughly the same amount. Um, he also lowered his ground ball rate by nearly 7%, which is awesome because Bryce Harper is not the fastest runner. He's the slowest runner either. He actually has average sprint speed. But when you have his kind of power, you want to be hitting more fly balls. And that's exactly what he did. He went from 22.8% in fly ball rate to 30.4%, which is awesome. He also didn't sacrifice any of his line drive rate. His batted ball metrics were basically perfect, to be honest. He didn't pull the ball a whole lot when he hit it in the air, but he really doesn't need to because Bryce Harper does actually have power to all fields and legitimately can homer to any side of the ballpark. Um, and yeah, I mean, there are a lot of positions where maybe I'd even put him higher than third. There do happen to be 2 first basemen that I like though, a little bit more than him. But I really do like what I saw out of Bryce Harper, and he's only 32 next year, so there's no reason to believe that we can't see it going forward.
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, the top three, I think we have the same top three, not in the same order, but
Yeah.
I think there's some interchangeability there. Um,
Mm-hmm.
my number three is who I was a guy I was very high on last year and put him number one. It's Freddie Freeman. I have at
Mm-hmm.
number three. He experienced, why I drag him down a little bit is, he experienced career lows in all expected numbers and barrel rate, and also had a 6-year low in average exit velocity. And then to top that all off, he's heading into his age 35 season. So it's a time where you would expect those numbers to kind of go down, and maybe they'll um, uh, go down more this upcoming year. However, on the other end, looking at putting a positive spin on his year, he was going through a lot, with his child last year, and I think that obviously can naturally put a damper on things and maybe have your focus away from baseball for obvious reasons and very understandable reasons. And despite that, he still managed a 143 OPS plus. He was still, an elite hitter in baseball, despite having to go through that. So that's why he stays in the top three for sure. He also had an elite sweet spot rate as he always does. So the things that are maybe more in his control, he was really really good at. So yeah, I expect another good year out of him, but I'm not necessarily riding the Freddie Freeman wave as much as I was this past year. I think part of that has to do with something maybe I didn't write down. His defense and base running wasn't necessarily as up to par as it was in 2023. Yeah, his outs above average went down, I think, 4, and he didn't steal 20 bases again. He he went from he went from 23 stolen bases to 9 stolen bases. I thought for a second there maybe he would be a pretty good base runner too, but I think his base running kind of came back to earth. So yeah, so like I don't think defense and base running is something to necessarily add to his case anymore. So I'm looking at mostly his hitting, and his hitting numbers went down a little bit, so I think that's why he's down the list a little bit. But still, I think he's a very valuable member of the Dodgers. I'm probably gonna have him like top 20 in my top 50. So yeah, I think he's still a really good reliable player that I'm excited to watch again this year.
Yeah, I put Freddie Freeman at 2. I put him 1 last year, obviously. Yeah, feel like I need to mention that. Yeah, I put Freddie Freeman 1 last year, 2 this year. I was very on the fence on how to go with Freeman and Harper. These two are very interchangeable. I don't fault you for putting Harper over Freeman. I assume that's what you did. I guess you could have gone maybe a different route too, though. I did put Freeman over the top because of the upside word, the U word, the P word potential, right? And I am kind of weighing a lot of this on the stuff that he was going through with his son, right? He had to leave the team for a few weeks to be with his 3-year-old son who was going through a lot of medical issues, and there was a lot of stress that I can only imagine, that added to him. He had an 888 OPS before leaving the team and had a 771 OPS after coming back, which, I think he's closer to that 888 OPS, in real time. And, I don't want to I'm not faulting him. I'm not saying, oh, that 771 OPS is something to clearly read into. I would imagine if you have that kind of thing on your mind, baseball goes much further in the back seat than it would otherwise. And I think the results of that showed. I think Freddie Freeman can absolutely get back to that, maybe closer to where he was in say 2022 or 23. I think his OPS can get back beyond 900 again. Defensive base running did obviously dip, like you mentioned, and that was more of a full season thing than it actually was just during those last couple months of the season. I still think the upside is too good to ignore. I still think that he can be exactly who he was, in his 2022 and 23 seasons on pretty much all offensive aspects. So I am putting Freddie Freeman in my 2.
Despite having career low numbers in certain metrics, those metrics were still really good. It was because he set such a high standard for himself. And yeah, like I mentioned, 143 OPS plus last year. That's really, really good. So yeah, my number 2 is Vladimir Guerrero Jr.,
Ooh.
who he had the best year among all these players last year. He led all first basemen in F4 in 2024. He also had the highest on base percentage, slugging, OPS plus, expected slugging, expected WOBA, average exit velocity, and barrel rate since 2021. So 3-year highs in all those numbers. That's a mix of actual results and expected results, and also the underlying numbers of average exit velocity and barrel rate. And he also had career highs, outdoing 2021 in batting average, expected batting average, and sweet spot rate. So yeah, I mean, it looked like the offense, really came back to life last year. You could argue that it was already kind of coming back to life before that and just wasn't getting the results of it. So it was a wonderful year for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., put up a 930 OPS, and it looks like he's kind of back on track to what we were projecting him to be. However, yeah, he had -9 outs above average, which is not the greatest. He's not super defensively valuable, which might bring him down the list. And yes, I had him number 8 last year. So he's certainly moving up quite a bit from the 8 spot that I had him at last year. But yeah, I think if he had average defense, I might put him number 1. And perhaps I don't have him as high as perhaps I don't have him number 1 because this is not necessarily a repeat success. This truly, I mentioned all these numbers were career highs since 2021. This is stuff we had not seen in 3 years. So that's obviously a good sign, but I think in terms of earning that number 1 spot for me, I need to see, that sort of repeat success and consistent success over a longer period of time. For the most part is what I expect for that. But yeah, who is your number 1 first baseman in baseball?
My number 1 is your number 2. I have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. up at the top. I had him at number 10 last year, so he is going from leading off this list to finishing it off for me. I believe in a contract year, career year for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Kind of like what we saw I see a lot of maybe some 2024 Juan Soto in 2025 Vlad Guerrero Jr., right? Coming off of a couple down years, defense being a major concern and a liability, but the upside clearly being there and it just fully showing itself going into the contract year. And I see that from Vlad Guerrero Jr. I think that the Soto payday is going to strike something within him to be like, all right, guess what? 1 big year, and maybe it's not 765 million, but it's not crazy far off. I mean, he's going to be 27 when he starts his post-free agency contract. It's probably going to be, if he has a good enough year, maybe a 12 to 13-year deal, right? Something crazy like that, I would have to imagine. Um, and the underlying metrics, they've always been there for Vlad Guerrero Jr., but they finally just absolutely came through this year. He led the league in expected batting average. He was top 3% in xWOBA, xSlugging, and average exit velocity. The bat speed was 95th percentile, which should be no surprise. But he also maintained a really good strikeout rate, 13.8%. That was in the 93rd percentile. I know that the defense is what it is, and I'm not saying that I expect some sort of crazy defensive resurgence this year. Not even 2024 Juan Soto saw that. But I'll tell you where he can improve, and it's, you guessed it, pulled fly balls. In 2021, 22, and 23, Vlad Guerrero Jr. put up 27% of fly balls being pulled. That is slightly above the league average. In 2024, it was only at 18%. It actually took quite a significant dip, and yet we saw such a huge offensive outbreak from him, a 940 OPS, where he was below 820 in each of the two previous years. I do believe we can get back to that 2021 form where we see, the much better rate of fly balls being pulled with everything else coming through the way it should. And we maybe see a 1,000 plus OPS from Vlad Jr. I do think the contract year will play some sort of factor in maybe a much better 2025 than we saw in 2020, even in 2024. And for that reason, I have him as the number one first baseman going into this year.
Right. Yeah, I mean, he certainly, in terms of upside, probably the most upside of anyone
Yes,
on
without a doubt.
on this list
And I'm
here.
buying into it.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean, like it's not even like you're going fully off of upside. He was the best first baseman in baseball last year. So yeah, my number one, if you've done your process of elimination, it is Bryce Harper, who was my number three first baseman in baseball last year. And it's not necessarily a full upgrade where he really, you know, the reason why he moved up is because he got better. It's, he was kind of, regular Bryce Harper. He actually, yeah, his OPS was within 2 points of what it was in 2023 this past year. But yeah, I just feel like there's something untapped in there. And even though he's a little bit older than Vladimir Guerrero Jr., I still feel that P word, the potential there. Because yeah, there were some odd trends that he had that I don't think are necessarily gonna stay the same. He had 8-year lows in barrel rate, expected WOBA, and expected slugging. However, despite that 8-year low in barrel rate, he still put up 30 home runs and a 149 OPS plus. He also has been a model of consistency offensively. He is one of only 4 players to put up a 140 OPS plus or higher in 400 plus plate appearances each of the last 4 years. He joins Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani, and Juan Soto in that group. And then also on the defensive end, he was third in outs above average among first basemen in 2024. He had eight outs above average, to go with an 898 OPS. Whereas Vladimir Guerrero Jr., he had negative 9 outs above average to go along with a 930 OPS. And I still think Bryce Harper can perform better offensively. I mean, his barrel rate was oddly like not near where it was the previous 3 years. And he's not old enough yet to where I think that's going to be a trend. He's only heading into his age 32 season. And I think, he has gold glove potential at first base as a fielder. So it's just more of an overall package with Bryce Harper plus the potential that he brings, because he is a 2-time MVP winner. I'm putting him number one because of that. And I think, ultimately, down to the brass tacks, the defense kind of separates him from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for me. Because I think they're both, very good offensively and also have a lot of potential to do more offensively. But Harper has the defensive advantage, and the 17 out above average difference in defense is enough for me to sacrifice the slight offensive detraction that Harper had, because I think he had 32 points.
30 points less of
Yeah.
OPS.
32 points less of OPS. But I'll take the plus 17 outs above average. But yeah, so yeah, I have Bryce Harper as my number one. Yeah, do you want to review 10 through 1 what our lists are?
Yes, I had Vinny Pasquantino at 10, Pete Alonso at 9, Carlos Santana at 8, Tristan Casas at 7, Yandy Diaz at 6, Matt Olson at 5, Christian Walker at 4, Bryce Harper at 3, Freddie Freeman at 2, and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at 1.
Yeah, I had Nathaniel Lowe opening up at number 10, Pete Alonso at number 9, Yandy Diaz at number 8, Tristan Casas at number 7, Vinny Pasquantino at number 6, Christian Walker at number 5, Matt Olson at number 4, Freddie Freeman at number 3, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. at number 2, and Bryce Harper at number 1.
Who was your unranked player from last year?
Paul Goldschmidt.
Right, so who'd you replace him with?
Oh, it was Nathaniel Lowe.
He was on your top 10 last year. Okay. Yeah, for me it was Paul Goldschmidt getting replaced with Carlos Santana.
Yep. Yeah, so so yeah, mostly returners, which I guess is, as you mentioned before the show, kind of a good sign for us that we didn't completely blow it last year. So that's a good thing. But yeah, there might be a couple lists where we have that, where we
Who
have that
knows?
situation happen. Who knows? Next week is center fielders, so be on the lookout for that. Um, and yeah, but anything more before we or yeah, I guess we should close out the show with some talking about some more
Yes.
unfortunate news in the world of baseball because an absolute legend of the game, baseball has lost. Ricky Henderson died at the age of
65.
65. Yeah, his birthday was only a couple days away
Yeah.
because he's a Christmas birthday. But yeah, Ricky Henderson passes away. Um, yeah, just a big surprise to the world of baseball, and just yeah, a big loss for the world of baseball.
I mean, we've done a lot of talk about Ricky Henderson on this show. He was, of course, part of the History series a couple of years ago. There will never be another, right?
Yeah.
Like there are like definitionally there will never be another. Um, I mean, when you go to his baseball reference page, the first thing you see is that you can't even fit all of it on one screen.
Right.
There you go. He played in what, 5 or 4 different decades? Yeah,
Yeah.
4 different decades, the 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s, which is remarkable. Played from ages 20 to 44. Is the all-time leader in runs scored with 2,295, stolen bases, of course, with 1,406. 3,000 career hits, nearly 300 career home runs, a 401 career OBP, 127 OPS plus, an MVP in one of the greatest seasons ever played in 1990. 9.9 B-WAR, uh, 28 home runs out of the leadoff spot with, oh, by the way, 65 stolen bases and 97 walks, a 1016 OPS in the 90s, pre-steroid era 90s.
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously the all-time leader in stolen bases, like I mentioned. I mentioned it before, but I think I should mention it again.
Right.
I put out this tweet yesterday. When I think of Ricky Henderson, and there are many different correct answers to what comes to mind first, but what comes to mind first for me is the 1989 American League Championship Series.
Yeah.
Just like there's so much to just comprehend. In 5 games, Ricky Henderson scored 8 runs. He scored 8 runs in 5 games, 6 hits, 1 double, 1 triple, 2 home runs, 5 RBI, and 8 stolen bases and 7 walks. He slashed 400, 609, 1,000, 1609 with an 11% championship win probability added in the ALCS. It wasn't even the World Series, and he alone increased his team's odds of winning the World Series by 11%. That is insane.
Yeah, unfortunately, the prep sheet for the history episode is locked away forever by
Yeah.
Springfield College because I had it in my college Google Docs.
Hmm.
But yeah, we oh yeah we have an Instagram reel way back in our Instagram
Hmm.
about that series, and I think he reached base every single game twice. Like he at the bare minimum got on base twice. I'm pretty sure he set the LCS or he still has the LCS record in steals despite it being a 5 game series. It's like it's absurd. It's it's not only video game numbers, but his video game numbers on beginner is what he was able to do in that series.
Hmm.
So yeah, like that is just what he was able to bring to the table was certainly defined in that series against the Blue Jays. And yeah, I mean another thing like I forget which video had it, but like the graph of like, you know, but I think it can be kind of explained verbally too, is like the gap between first place and second place in stolen bases is almost incomparable in baseball. Like, with home runs, you have, Barry Bonds at 762, you got Hank Aaron at 755. It's pretty close.
7 point difference. Yeah, 7 home run difference.
With hits, it's 4256 to 4191. With stolen bases, it's 1406,
To
and then no one
nine,
else has
what,
a
30?
thousand.
939,
No,
938,
no one else has 1,000.
938, I believe is Lou Brock. Yeah.
It is 938, yeah. Um, so yeah, like it is it is such a big gap, and it's almost insurmountable. Like even with the stolen base changes, I don't think anyone is going to be, even with the rule changes, I don't think anyone's going to be reaching that mark. So yeah, I mean he's etched in forever in baseball history, and probably will be for the rest of time. So yeah, and then yeah, and he wasn't just a stolen base guy. He got on base over 40% of the time in his career.
Yeah. At one
He's
point was the all-time walks leader.
Yep, at one point was the all-time walks leader. And yeah, played for I
And
think
I
nine.
believe there is video of him getting there, right?
Um, I think so too. It might be in episode 41, part one, of the show to be named later, as it was called then. Um, but yeah, he he was an absolute legend. And yeah, it's unfortunate that we're losing him, because also he seemed to be a pretty prominent figure after his career, and someone who everyone had really positive experiences meeting, when they had the pleasure of doing so.
I don't know if it was his last public appearance, but he was at the final game at the Coliseum from earlier this September. And by the way, MLB.com did actually post a video yesterday of Ricky Anderson breaking the all-time walks record.
There we go.
Uh, Broke Babe Ruth's record, and it was later broken by Barry Bonds. But I mean, regardless,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate that the video is out there and that we can all enjoy it.
He was the walk king at one point.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, just yeah, like people will reference him as one of the greatest players of all time, and that is completely true. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and it doesn't have to in all, across all generations, we can agree how great Ricky Henderson was. Like he had over 100 WAR, but also, had over 3,000 hits, and the stolen base record, like all numbers suggest he was an absolute legend. So there's not really any discourse to be had when discussing Ricky Henderson's career.
If you want to talk about just how awesome Ricky was, people love talking about like certain spans that people had in their careers, right? One of them is Albert Pujols from 2001 to 2010, right? It was a 10 season span where he put up how what was the wins above replacement, like little over like 80 something
80,
basically.
like over
Uh,
80, yeah.
Yeah, Ricky Henderson from 1980 to 1990, 80.9 wins above replacement. He had 6 WAR in all but one of those seasons. That's an 11 season span.
Yeah, and then he played for 13 more years after that.
And then exactly, and then yeah, uh and then he had another 7,000 plate appearances after that.
Yeah, and like he was, even late in his
You
career,
could split his career up in two and you have two Hall of Famers.
even late in his career, he was just stacking up numbers. Like age
Hmm.
39 season, he leads MLB in stolen bases with 66. People have had success in their age 39 season, but they're not ever leading in stolen bases.
They're not stealing bases.
No, no, not at all. And then the following 2 years, age 40 and 41 seasons, he cracks 30. And and yeah, in his age 42 season, he steals 25. Um,
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of
He would have played forever if someone kept signing him.
yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure after his MLB career, he played in like a semi-pro organization
That sounds about right.
until he was like 47 or something like that, and then maybe he
He
stopped.
did. No, he literally did. He played in 2004. He played for the Newark Bears of the Atlantic League, just in
Yeah,
New Jersey. Uh, put up an 897 OPS at age 45 with
yeah.
how
There
many
you go.
steals? With 37 stolen bases and a 462 OBP. He was taking like a ton of walks. He took 96 walks in 91 games at age 45.
Yeah, it's absurd.
And
And
then
I've
73 walks in 73 games in 2005 at age 46, playing for the San Diego Surf Dogs of the Golden League.
yeah, and
A
I've
team I would love to see. They has okay. I want to say something real quick. So I'm looking at the Golden League. The the San Diego Surf Dogs had 74,000 people in attendance throughout the season with an average of 1,600 a game. Is that like more than everyone else? It's got to be, right? Yeah, Mesa had 46,000. I don't feel like looking at everyone else, but I'm gonna take that for what it is and assume it's the same everywhere else.
Yeah, I've been to an Atlantic League game in New Britain, Connecticut, and it's crazy to imagine like Ricky Henderson
Ricky Henderson, the year
just
after
showing up.
retirement, he was playing for the Dodgers the last year.
Yeah, yeah, like I can't imagine like, a 24-year-old who just like finished college, still trying to make it, and then like all of a sudden, they got to worry about Ricky Henderson on
Ricky
first base.
Henderson,
He's
yeah.
he's he's coming off a 25-year MLB career.
I
Yeah.
saw a tweet yesterday that made me laugh where it said like Ricky Henderson would bat flip on home runs, but no one could hit him the next time he came up because then he would just steal second and third.
That's hilarious. Yeah,
I
no,
mean,
it's
like the Ricky triple was like a term.
right, right. I mean, and
Like it's a staple. It's when you walk and then steal at second and third base.
and yeah, you're completely justified in making that, yeah, in creating that term for sure. Like yeah, that is yeah, he just an exceptional um yeah, an exceptional career, and yeah, seemed to be enjoyed in the baseball world outside of his playing abilities. And yeah, just yeah, like leaves a mark on baseball history. But yeah, very unfortunate that he is taken from us, still relatively soon.
Too soon.
Yeah. But yeah, anything more before we wanted to wrap this up?
No, I think that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, rest in peace to Ricky Henderson. And yeah, if you are listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify and want to watch the conversation as it happens, go to the YouTube channel. It is called Above Replacement Radio. Also, go check out the playlist on that YouTube channel. We've got guest interviews. Most recently with Matt Brash of the Seattle Mariners. You can check out what he has to say about his Tommy John recovery and pitching in some of the biggest moments in Mariners history. Let's say, the day they clinched the playoff spot to end the drought. The moment he struck out two batters in a row to keep their season alive. Um, more, that stuff and more. Go check out the Matt Brash interview, and we've also interviewed Mark Simon 4 times. We've interviewed Chris Rose, Jeff Passan, Sarah Langs, Mike Petriello. Make sure to go check all that out on the guest interviews playlist on our YouTube channel. Also, follow us on social media. Follow me on Twitter at Chris_Dion to follow Daniel on both Twitter and Instagram at Daniel_Curran, and follow the show Instagram at Above Replacement Radio. If you scroll deep enough on the Reels section, you'll see us talking about Ricky Henderson and his 1989 ALCS. So if you're curious about that, go check out the show Instagram. Since we don't have too many reels on there, it probably won't be that hard to find. But yeah, that shall do it for this installment of Replacement Radio. We hope you enjoyed this one, and we hope to see you next time, where we'll be talking all the happenings in Major League Baseball and the top 10 center fielders in baseball. We will see you then.
This conversation is over.
Is over.